Hello, every folks, and good morning. Welcome to the second last episode to Know Your Unit Reborn. Apparently, I somehow missed the Buccaneer, so let's go ahead and discuss that real quick. So, the Buccaneer is a unique class that you get courtesy of saving Azelston. However, whenever you go and save him, you only get himself as a Buccaneer. In order to get the class for everybody else, you have to actually go take the pirate's treasure at the end of his little side quest. A couple little notes just to bring this up in case you are doing said side quest. For one thing, you actually have to deploy him to his final fight. For another thing, you really don't get anything for turning down that treasure outside of having another event take place, so you do you in that particular regard. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk skills and functions. So, this is effectively almost like a human version of the hoplite with a few extra features. In fact, it's kind of funny that that in many ways they're kind of like a mix between the hoplite and the fairy in some ways. But let's go ahead and get to it here. So we get fists, daggers, one-handed swords, two-handed swords, axes, whips, crossbows, and guns. For the most part, we'll probably end up using, just for the sake of it's freaking cool, we'll probably end up being swords and guns. What is going on with that sound? I don't know. Anyway, apparently the sound itself got shot in the face. Let's go ahead and continue on. So, you get all of those as far as skills go. I would imagine most would probably end up using guns. However, they are the opposite of the Ranger, being limited to pistols instead of rifles. So they can't use any of the bigger variants of those guns there, though that being said, while this was an issue back in PSP, in Reborn, this is so absolutely not an issue that it's not even funny. Having access to automatic resonances to give them those big bonuses, on top of having obviously pretty meaty attack values on these guns, while also having 25% physical bonus, and this isn't even maxed out. I believe the maximum might have gone up to like 40 or so. Their physical bonus is absolutely atrocious, so pretty much if anything's hit by fear, the gun's going to delete them immediately. Anyway, as far as their standard loadout, it ends up looking a little bit like this. Just going and giving them a sword. Personally, I liked running stunning swords for the longest time, but you can basically run them with whatever you'd like. You can run a dual-wield build if you'd like. That is going to be available later on their skill list, but let's go ahead and continue on real quick. So, they're also going to run Constitution for a bit of extra health, Insight for extra MP cheese type stuff, Pincer Attack for obvious reasons, Steadfast just because they're a frontliner, Double Attack for the purpose of going and hitting something twice. They're one of the few classes that's able to pull this off effectively, so if you're going to use it on someone, use it on your Buccaneer. I know I reiterate this every time, but for those that missed it, the reason that Double Attack has a tendency to be a bit of a liability for many of the classes that can use it is simply because of how expensive it is time-wise. So, like, for example, your standard turn, as you see over there, is a recovery time of 102. If we end up looking at some of the, power swords and stuff like that people would end up using, you could potentially be seeing up to 40 here, so if you're spending 80 recovery time, you're effectively doubling the length of your next turn. Obviously, there's a lot of, little asterisks to that, but you get the idea that it's just really expensive. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on here. So resist petrify, resist charm for the usual type of stuff there. If you just to mention this, if you are running him as ice, I would recommend actually keeping charm on him. The Buccaneer is not exactly the tankiest thing in the world, and he himself doesn't really come with an absurd amount of vitality. I've just oftentimes seen that he was getting targeted by ranged units whenever there weren't monster units around, so bear that in mind. Anytime that a unit is lower on defense, consider remembering that resist charm exists, because Flaming Blast likes to target those squishier units. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on. He comes with Coax, since he's able to talk his way through the lizards. Comes with Shadow Break. I should really look into whether this one also has some hidden function, because it's just kind of an absolutely shitty ability, as far as I can tell anyway. Then again, used to think the same thing about Evanescence until suddenly it's now my favorite thing as of today, but let's go ahead and continue on. Evade, just like the Hoplite, it allows you to go and plink away any physical effect whatsoever. This does include your own items, so obviously bear that in mind. Make sure that whenever you're setting up with your buff items, you do it before his auto skills trigger or after they've been shaved off. Otherwise, you're just going to waste both effects. You also have Speed Star. Bear in mind that if you are running a guaranteed auto team, put Speed Star before Evade in your skill list so that it doesn't run over your Evade. And or if you want to make sure that it's always triggering and for some reason you feel like wasting your Evade slot, you can put it on the left. I don't know why you do that, but it's certainly there. You have Back Attack, which I'm still looking into. I still feel like there's some hidden function to this that we're missing. The Dragon Slayer is only on here because he's got 3 pieces of Dragon Scale armor. And then Thank you, random spam call. And then we have Apostate, just like the lizard classes, which allows you to plink away up to 3 magic effects. I should point out that Nullify gets rid of 1 physical attack. Apostate gets rid of 3 magic attacks. Now these will be individually parsed out, so this makes him almost immune to first tier ninja magic type stuff, partially immune to the second tier ninja stuff, mostly immune to basic summons, and then kind of halfway immune to tier 2 summons. This essentially makes it so that in many cases he is able to shrug off magic attacks very effectively. And then lastly, risk management to go spread any damage coming his way over to other people. A couple of notes here is the interactions with Speedstar. So if you are running a double attacker, this is one of the reasons that he's actually able to make up for it very effectively. Essentially, if you're going for Apostate 2 plus Speedstar, those two don't interact in any weird way. Risk management can also potentially help with this, but that can combine in with a double attack, which combines in pretty darn well with a lot of their weapons. Now, unlike many of the other dual-wielding options out there, in his particular case, he's able to equip a sword to get a counter option. So in many cases, I would recommend equipping the Lombardia as a solid secondary there. So just kind of something to bear in mind, as it were. Personally, I liked this setup because it seemed kind of fitting for, you know, a pirate. You got the basket hilt, and you also got the little swirly rapier thing, which, after One Vision's recent patch, I can't not look at this and think, like, wow, this should have 2-tile range. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on here. So, overall skill-wise, I mean, all of this stuff is pretty straightforward. Talk the lizards out of your way. Generally, if you're running a directed attacker build, go for Speedstar. Maybe get rid of Evade. Maybe swap that out for a risk management. If you're going to go full tank mode, you can always go Apostate, Evade, Steadfast, and then just your standard weapon skill. I personally really liked running this guy with the Vinatea's Talons. As he was a frontliner, he was hitting really hard with that. He's got some pretty solid range coming off of his abilities here. Like Howling Rage is just a really solid punish. So in the hands of the Buccaneer, you have a unit that's near immune to a lot of different damage sources, unable to be moved around. You've got 3 elemental punishes right here. And if you wanted to just go ahead and swap this out for something like a Poison Claw, go for it. It's barely a difference damage-wise. But then at the same time, if you wanted to, stick with the Talons, if you happen to pick up a bunch of crit cards, you could potentially get very, very early access to Sylphide 2. Again, this is like one of those really, really niche things. I wouldn't expect most folks to go for the Talons. There's something like a 4% drop from a boss that you have to, beat multiple times, so it's, maybe you'll get lucky on your first go, but it's a bit of a thing. Anyway, so that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some other use cases gear-wise. If you're going for the pistol setup, one of the downsides is that your offhand pistols and stuff like that don't come with counterattack, unfortunately. Honestly, that's one of those ones I'm a little surprised by, that the light pistols and light crossbows don't come with a counter, because the one-handed bows do. At least the late-game one-handed bows do, so... not sure what's up with that, but oh well. Anyways, if you wanted to have him as more of a spellcaster sort, you have stuff like the Pinion Blade on there. Snub Fusel is pretty self-explanatory. You find something, you pop it with this thing, it's generally good stuff. The only downside with a build like this is just the sheer hungriness of slots. So in that case, they might actually consider just Evade maybe will be good enough to hopefully keep them safe, and maybe they won't want Steadfast. Obviously, there's a ton of overlap with these particular ones, but I just personally like the way that this sort of lines up in a nice little pattern down here. You can have your own reasons for preferring stuff. Anyway, additionally, there's actually other options here as well, including axes. So, while I have a lot of these relic ones used up, you can do a very similar thing here, swapping out this dagger for an axe, which is funny because in his particular case, he actually would get more out of the dagger. But either way, this gives you, like axes in particular would probably be a lot better in terms of your finisher coverage. Obviously, he doesn't have it right here, but he would actually come to think of it. Why am I not doing this on Denim? Let's go ahead and swap Denim out for that so that he looks cooler and all of that kind of some suchery. Funnily enough, the Buccaneer does do a lot of things that the Lord can't, including the ability to use Fusel and Fusel and axe finishers at the same time. Anyway, so let's go for guns. Let's go for axes. Like this is a great amount of coverage right here. You've got light over here. You've got wind over here. You've got earth over here. You've got ice over here. You've got multiple crit multipliers. Misstep, no one's ever going to use. Stagger, no one's ever going to use. But realistically, still, light and air are pretty solid. Crit multiplier, silence, and all of that. So either way, good amount of coverage there. Plus, it looks cool as hell. If we're being honest there. So anyways, something like Risk Management and Speedstar are generally pretty good at shaving away a lot of damage things. The thing about Risk Management is that when it goes and redirects a lot of that damage, just like with something like Guardian Force, it is effectively lowering the overall total damage, not only to that unit in particular, but the actual total amount, as in they will be getting a better return than it actually says, just due to rounding weirdness, where it'll just kind of send stuff kind of off to the Shadow Realm, so to speak. Just a certain bit of that damage will more or less disappear. So I personally really like this for coverage, but you do you. Whips are also just really solid if you want a effective frontline whip spammer. Unfortunately, we can't do, like, if we had access to the PSP supple whip, this would be absolutely insane for coverage. But yeah, no one-handed whip this time around. For those that missed it, back in PSP, there was a one-handed whip. Just due to the absolute insane raw power of whips this time around, I'm not even too shocked that it didn't make it. Like, could you just friggin' imagine, like, you come in, you have access to friggin' Armageddon, plus also more elemental coverage. Yeah, it's a bit much. But anyways, no, you get whatever defensive skills you prefer on top of that whip. It's just generally going to be a good time. Hell, you could even just go for something like this, just be a tanky whip guy. Sure, can the Lord do something like this too? Sure, but still, for all the other Buccaneers, this is absolutely an option. So as far as the other Buccaneers, bear in mind that Vice got access to Buccaneer this time around. Canopus, obviously, given his pirate looks, was always able to be a Buccaneer. So, he can be one too. Additionally, if you wanted more of these class marks beyond that treasure box, you don't have to redo that entire side quest. If you go back to the room where you got the Buccaneer, you kill the skeletons there, they'll end up dropping a few. Still, though, there's a lot of ways to kind of see those options there. All right. So the only one that's in here that's kind of a bit of an odd duck here is probably going to be crossbows. Just because, like, realistically, in most cases, the unique part of the class is having access to that to the Fusel there, and I have run Fusel crossbow before. It's not terrible. It looks stupid, and that makes me appreciate it even more. But I mean, this isn't bad coverage, I guess, to be fair. Like, if you are running, let's say, a glass pumpkin build or something, like if we swap this out for a glass pumpkin or something, by the end game you should have a decent stack of those going. Yeah, this could be pretty legit. Like, you just stack up your pumpkins, maybe get rid of that evade so that we're not running into that issue. Actually, maybe go for something like a Dragon Slayer in this case, because we already have the massive damage coming off of the Petronel. Just upgrade this crossbow, get a stun effect on there. So you've got a debuff on one shot. You've got the gun to get your massive damage on the other. You've got your fire coverage, your light coverage, your wind coverage over here, and basically one of the best damage multiplier finishers in the game through Death Whale. So it could work. You also have stop here, which kind of makes up for the fact that the Fusel's kind of other finishers, the first two finishers, are a bit doo-doo, but anyway. Yeah, those two were a bit more PSP specific, but it's funny because even when you got them in PSP, they weren't exactly amazing. Anyway, so that is the Buccaneer in a nutshell. They're a interesting hybrid between lizard and man, and the reason that I say that the Speedstar kind of makes the fairy thing happen, even though the fairies ended up losing the Speedstar this time around, a lot of their loadout was very similar in PSP to the fairy in that one. Interestingly enough, they actually used to have kiss moves as well, so that very likely could have been a bug. But anyway, Shadow Break, though, is still an odd duck. I'm still staring at this one, wondering, like, there's a bunch of really good classes that get access to Shadow Break, and, you know, it says it dispels shadows. It's not exactly expensive, but it's more expensive than you'd think, like, especially, like, comparing with something like Coax that, sure, it might be specific against one unit type, but, like, this will delete that unit and put them to your side. You know, it's a massive deal. Whereas something like Shadow Break, you know, costs almost twice as much. It's to counter an ability almost nobody uses. There's more to this. I know there's more to this. I'm still testing to see if I can figure out what more there is to this ability. Anyway, that's all I got time for. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.